I wasn't born deaf. At the bar, Louis had one arm around me, a cigarette pinched in his other hand. A friend looked me over and then asked Louis, "Are you really into guys? What do you even see in him?" Louis answered casually, "Who likes guys? I'm not gay. Kissing him makes me sick," Louis said, taking a drag from his cigarette. His friend snickered. "Aren't you afraid he'll hear you?" Louis turned to me with a gentle smile, but his next words sent a chill down my spine. He thinks places like this are too loud, so he never wears his hearing aids. He can't hear a thing. Then why did you get with him in the first place? First time I'd ever had a gay guy in my life, Louis said, flicking his ash. Just wanted to see what it was like. He didn't know I was wearing them tonight. I frowned the second we got to the bar. I could see Louis's crew from a distance.
He walked over.
With a cigarette still between his lips, Louis pointed to the spot next to him, telling me to sit. I have acquired hearing loss. A slap from my alcoholic father when I was a kid did it. I wear my hearing aids every time I go out, except for places like this. Louis poured me a drink and gestured with his hands, telling me to have some. I uncomfortably pulled the brim of my hat lower. I took a sip of the drink and put it back on the table. His friend laughed. He said to Louis, "Your little boyfriend doesn't drink at all?" I looked at Louis, confused. He leaned back, a cigarette between his fingers.
Yeah.
Getting him to have a drink is harder than climbing Mount Everest. At that, his friend laughed even harder. "No way. You haven't slept with him yet. Have you?" Louis narrowed his eyes, chewing on his cigarette without saying a word. "Hey, so are you really into guys? Seriously, what is it you like about him?" I wanted to know, too. What did Louis see in me? He's deaf and mute. Besides a pretty face, what else is there to attract you? Thinking of something, Louis blew out a smoke ring and chuckled. He's got a great body, too. His friends roared with laughter. A few of them kept looking me up and down. My face turned pale. I felt a little dazed. Is this what Louis was like when I wasn't wearing my hearing aids? Did he make jokes about me in front of everyone like this? I'm deaf, not mute. I just don't like to talk. Louis chain smoked, his left hand holding the cigarette while his right rested on my shoulder. As they played their game, the conversation circled back to me. "You still haven't answered. Are you really into guys?" Louis took a drag and said casually, "Who likes guys? I'm not gay. Every time I kiss him, I feel sick." The color drained from my face. Sick? Just last night, Louis was clinging to me, saying that no matter what the future held, he'd face it with me. His friend said with a grin, "Aren't you afraid he'll hear you?" Meeting my gaze, Louis gave me a gentle smile, but the words that followed made my blood run cold. "It's too loud in here. He doesn't wear his hearing aids." "Seriously? Then why'd you even get with him?" Louis flicked his cigarette ash. "It was the first time I had a gay guy around. I just wanted to play around. I couldn't hear anything, just a buzzing in my ears." I stood up, grabbed a beer bottle from the table, and smashed it over Louis's head. Blood mixed with alcohol streamed down his face. No one expected me to suddenly snap, and for a moment they were all too stunned to react. I stared right into Louis's eyes. My voice was crystal clear, each word deliberate. "It must have been so hard for you, kissing someone so disgusting. You can get lost." I walked out of the bar. I squatted by the side of the road, Louis's words replaying endlessly in my head. My hearing aids started beeping, a low battery warning. The next second, I couldn't hear anything at all. This was my first pair of hearing aids. I'd saved up for a long time to buy them. They'd lasted until now, but they were barely holding on anymore. Tonight was just the worst. I wiped my face, dusted off my pants, and stood up to hail a cab. A black car pulled up in front of me. The rear window rolled down, and I looked up to see a handsome, sharp-featured face. His indifferent eyes swept over me as he asked coolly, "What are you doing squatting here?" It was Louis's uncle, Julian. I'd met him once when Louis and I were out to dinner. Louis had slung an arm around my shoulder and called out, "Hey, uncle." That's how I learned Louis had an uncle who was only 5 years older than him. Today really was the worst luck. I stared blankly as his lips moved, unable to hear what he was saying. Julian's gaze landed on my face, and then he opened the car door and got out. He gestured a few times, asking if my hearing aid was dead. I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Julian told me to get in the car. Louis had told me his uncle was cold and arrogant. He was incredibly capable but never bothered with any of them. If they happened to run into him, it was just a quick hello. And now, considering who he was, I sniffled and refused. Julian just stared at me. After a moment of hesitation, I got in the car. The whole way, I stared out the window without a word. My mind drifted back to the start of my freshman year of college. Louis and I were roommates. Not long after school started, my roommates found out I was gay. My bed would always be mysteriously wet, and so would my blankets. My things were always a mess. It even got posted on the campus forum. The comments were all personal attacks. My roommates avoided me like the plague, hurling the most vicious words at me. They told me to get out of the dorm. I didn't understand what I'd done wrong. Why was I being treated like this? I was quiet, and I was deaf. Faced with all of it, I chose silence. You guys seriously think you're all that? Like anyone here is checking you out? Get a grip. Pretty ugly on the outside, but you sure think highly of yourselves. In the midst of all the verbal abuse, Louis was the first one to stand up for me. I was a little surprised. I never thought anyone would defend me. After Louis spoke up, the others didn't dare say much. I bought him a coffee to thank him for speaking up for me. After that, Louis started going to class with me. He didn't care if people stared at us on the way. Louis said, "See? These people have nothing better to do." I nodded in agreement. Finally, in our junior year, our other two roommates couldn't stand it anymore and moved out. It was just me and Louis in the dorm room. One time, a guy confessed his feelings to me. Before I could even turn him down, a hand suddenly landed on my shoulder. Louis smiled casually. "Sorry, man, he's taken." The guy glanced between me and Louis, then turned and left. "Since when do I have a boyfriend?" I couldn't help but ask after he was gone. Louis grinned and pointed to himself. Me, of course. "So, Alex, how about you consider being my boyfriend?" I was stunned. Louis's confession was anything but serious, but I still said yes. Because Louis was genuinely good to me. We were together for 2 years. I thought Louis and I would be together forever. And now he was saying that being gay was disgusting. That being with me was the most miserable time of his life. Julian suddenly touched my arm. I snapped back to reality, turning my confused gaze to him. A gift was being held out in front of me, accompanied by Julian's calm voice. "Happy birthday." Even though I couldn't hear him, I could tell from his lips that he was saying happy birthday. My brain short-circuited for a second. My eyes fell to the black box in Julian's well-defined hands. I'd forgotten myself. Today was my birthday. I was a little dazed. Julian, how did he know it was my birthday? Before I could figure it out, Julian pushed the box closer to me. The gift looked expensive. "This is too much. I can't accept it." I looked down, finally managing to squeeze out the words. Besides, Julian and I weren't that close. Julian chuckled softly. He reached out with his free hand, took mine, and the spot where he touched me felt scorching hot. He turned my palm up and placed the box in my hand. "Really, you don't have to. Take it," Julian signed. I accepted Julian's gift. When we got to my apartment complex, I got out. I held the gift box and said thank you to Julian through the window. Julian just nodded. I turned and walked a few steps before turning back. The window, which had started to roll up, came back down. Julian turned his head to look at me. I clutched the box and bit my lip. Good night. Back home, I felt physically and mentally exhausted. The first thing I did was put my hearing aids on to charge. Sitting on the sofa, I stared at the gift box in my hands. After a few seconds of hesitation, I opened it. Inside was a watch, simple and beautiful. It looked very expensive. I sighed. I still didn't understand why Julian knew it was my birthday or why he'd prepared a gift. Since it was a birthday present, I figured I'd just get him something for his birthday. I picked up my phone and saw a flood of messages and missed calls from Louis. Staring at the screen full of excuses, I could only laugh. The last 3 messages were from Louis, demanding to know why I'd gotten into Julian's car. I just found it laughable. I blocked him on everything. Louis had stood up for me once. Whether he meant it or not, he had helped me. Let's just leave it at that. I didn't want to dwell on it. Unexpectedly, the next day, Louis showed up at my door. Alex, listen to me. I stayed in my room, playing music. I ignored him. Louis kept at it for a few days, even standing downstairs. I remained unmoved, but I never expected him to corner me at my office building. Ignoring the stares of the people around us, Louis grabbed my arm forcefully. Alex, why won't you just listen to me? Give me a chance to explain. A chance to explain? The fact that he could say those things meant there was nothing left to explain. I shook his hand off. Louis, you don't have to explain. We're done. Alex, we've been together for 2 years. Why won't you give me a chance? Right? Louis knew we'd been together for 2 years. So how could he say those things? Because it's disgusting, I said, looking right into Louis's eyes. Being with you disgusts me. I wasn't thinking straight that day. I was just joking around. As he spoke, Louis tried to grab me again. Don't take it to heart. I laughed. A joke? Only Louis could come up with an excuse like that. But I'm not joking with you, I said, my lips curling into a sneer. Get lost. If I hadn't heard what he'd said that day, I probably would have kept following him around like an idiot. I had loved Louis, but he had shattered that love. Louis grabbed me forcefully, his face stubborn. Alex, we are going to clear this up today. He gritted his teeth. You were never like this before. I looked at him, and I never knew you were so disgusted by gay people. Louis's face changed. Just as he was about to say something, a low, indifferent voice cut in. What's going on here? Louis and I both turned. Julian glanced at us. Uncle Louis greeted him. Julian gave a faint his eyes landing on my face. He had driven me home and given me a gift the other day. I said, Julian. Louis, for some reason, suddenly stepped in front of me, blocking Julian's view of me. Uncle, what are you doing here? Louis asked. I couldn't see Julian's expression, but I heard his calm reply. I had some business to take care of. And you too? Before I could speak, Louis cut in. Alex and I are having a little fight. I came to ask for his forgiveness. Is that so? Julian looked at me. What kind of fight would make Alex this angry? Hearing my name, I felt a little lost. I pushed Louis aside. Sorry, Julian. I smiled and said, Julian, I really love the birthday gift you gave me. Thank you. As long as you like it. Our exchange seemed to snap Louis back to reality. He looked back and forth between me and Julian, his brow furrowed. Alex, you too. I pulled out my hearing aid in frustration. Julian let out a soft laugh. Maybe he'd finally gotten the message. For the past few days, Louis had been dead silent. He hadn't bothered me again. When you're an adult, if one relationship doesn't work, you move on to the next. Besides, there was more to life than love, there was work. I didn't have time to be sad. I was focused on writing code for a project when my supervisor came out of his office and told me not to come in tomorrow. The office went quiet for a moment. I stopped typing, and it took me a second to process what he'd said. Why, sir? My supervisor patted me on the shoulder. Did you piss someone off? I thought of Louis. I couldn't think of anyone else. All I can say is, I'm sorry, Alex. I packed my things and left. As soon as I got downstairs, I saw Louis leaning against his car, smoking. Looks like I was right. I pretended not to see him and stood by the curb with my box, waiting for a cab. Alex. Louis walked over, a half-smoked cigarette between his fingers. He said, if you forgive me, you can go right back upstairs and have your job back. I got this job during my senior year of college after sending out countless resumes. Other major firms were impressed with my resume, but when they found out I had a hearing problem, they'd awkwardly say, sorry. Now, Louis had gotten me fired, and he still wanted me to get back together with him. Was the word doormat written on my face? Louis, have you been watching too many cheesy dramas? I said, my voice cold with laughter. Louis didn't expect me to speak to him like that. He took a drag from his cigarette and laughed. his eyes fixed on my face. Alex, you know that no matter where you apply, whether you get hired or not is just a matter of one word from me. Louis ran in powerful circles. He was right. If he wanted to screw me over, all it would take was one word. Just as Louis said, all the resumes I sent out disappeared into a black hole. This was my first year after graduation. I wouldn't say I had huge accomplishments at work, but I had definitely contributed a lot to the company's bottom line. How could I not get a single reply? All I can say is Louis is ruthless. He wants me to come crawling back to him. In his dreams. I slammed my laptop shut, walked out onto the balcony, and lit a cigarette. It had been 2 weeks since I was fired. I still hadn't found a job. Thankfully, I'd always been frugal, saving money from my job. Aside from rent and utilities, I didn't have many expenses. Otherwise, my savings wouldn't have lasted long. At this rate, I could hold out for 3 months. I blew a smoke ring into the night. When I was with Louis, I didn't smoke or drink. I hadn't even been this anxious when I was job hunting back then. Just 2 weeks, and now I was doing both. If Louis wanted me to beg him, he could keep waiting. I stubbed out my cigarette and went back inside. For the sake of a job, I could swallow my pride. I took over 30 copies of my resume and went to various large companies to ask if they were hiring. I lost count of how many times I was turned away. There was only one left. Innovatech. I took my resume to the front desk and asked if they were hiring. The receptionist, with a professional smile, said that all job openings were posted on their website. Okay, rejected. I turned to leave, and the elevator dinged open. A few men in black suits walked out. The most striking among them was the man in the center. My pupils contracted. It was Julian. As if sensing my gaze, Julian looked over. I almost instinctively looked away, but Julian came over anyway. Alex, what are you doing here? Now that he was right in front of me, I couldn't pretend anymore. I said, I'm looking for a job. Julian's eyes landed on my face. He asked softly, what happened to your job? I looked up at him, trying to read his expression. Louis was his nephew, and given the connections and tactics Louis had likely used to force my hand, I couldn't believe Julian didn't know about it. I gave him a wide grin. I got fired. Louis's handiwork. Julian looked at me for a long time and I stared back. Finally, Julian was the one to look away. Want to try my company? At that moment, I desperately wanted a cigarette to calm my nerves. I said I applied. Got rejected. I really had applied. And I had been rejected. HR had politely told me I wasn't a good fit for their company. Julian didn't say anything. He took a business card from his pocket and handed it to me. I need an assistant. Call me when you've thought it over. Life has a way of crushing my pride. 1 second, I was scoffing at the offer. The next day, I was shamelessly making the call. I thought it over. Julian hummed in response. Come in tomorrow. And just like that, I became Julian's assistant. On my first day, Julian took me to a private clinic that specialized in hearing aids. What are we doing here? The second I asked, I realized it was a stupid question. Julian glanced at me. Onboarding gift. Do assistants get onboarding gifts? This really was a big company. I put on the new hearing aids. I had to admit you get what you pay for. But I glanced at the price list. Nope, let's go. After 2 weeks, I decided being Julian's assistant wasn't bad at all. It was much less stressful than my previous job. Julian's office door wasn't fully closed. I raised my hand to knock when I heard Louis's voice. For a moment, I was stunned. Uncle, why did you hire Alex as your assistant? Louis's voice was furious but restrained. We had a fight, and this was the only way I could force him to come back and beg me. My hand clutching the documents tightened. How did I never see it before? Louis was a real piece of shit. I don't know how Louis found out I was working for Julian. As I was spacing out, I heard Julian's unhurried voice. Alex is exceptional. He needed a job and I could give him one. Uncle, I'm begging you, please fire him. Louis's voice was softer now. If you need an assistant, I can find you an experienced one. Alex is deaf and doesn't like to talk. He can't do this job. Whether he can do it or not is his business. That's enough. You can go. There was a full minute of silence from inside. Then Louis's voice suddenly shot up, like he was having a seizure. "Uncle, did you fall for Alex? You never let anyone in your car. I thought it was strange back when Alex and I had that fight and he mentioned you gave him a gift. Uncle, I can't think of any other reason." Louis took a deep breath. "You've fallen for Alex, haven't you?" Standing outside the door, I didn't know what to do. I wasn't prepared for this. Julian's cool voice cut through the crack in the door, hitting my eardrums directly. He admitted it without hesitation. "Yes." "So what?" Louis laughed, a bitter sound. "Uncle, and I even call you that. You're supposed to be an elder. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? Falling for your nephew's boyfriend?" Louis's words were sharp and merciless. Julian was calm. "You broke up. At most, he's your ex-boyfriend." I hid before Louis stormed out. My heart was pounding uncontrollably. It felt like it was going to leap out of my throat. I took a long time to calm down, but it didn't help. "Julian likes me?" I thought about it all day and all night, and I couldn't figure out what Julian could possibly like about me. When I was little, my mom couldn't take my dad's abuse anymore. She left. He was a gambling alcoholic who would come home drunk and beat me senseless. In middle school, he came home drunk again. He beat me for no reason. My ears went deaf after he slapped me across the face. Fortunately, he died when I was in high school. So, I couldn't understand why Julian would like me. Or was he just trying to piss Louis off? The question bothered me so much that I was late for work the next day. And of course, as I was waiting for the elevator, it dinged. Julian walked out. I kept my head down, just hoping he wouldn't dock my attendance bonus. His voice came from above my head. "You're late. This is terrifying." Resigned to my fate, I looked up. "Dock it if you have to." I owned up to my mistake. "Mr. Chun, it won't happen again." I don't know if Julian believed me or not. He just said and told me to join him for a client meeting. Louis came to the office looking for me. I didn't see him. I'd see him from a distance and duck away. After a couple of times, Julian spoke directly to security and told them to throw Louis out if he ever came back. I stood in his office, dumbfounded. That's his nephew. How could he be so ruthless? After hanging up, Julian looked up at me. "I have a business trip in 2 days. Go home and pack. You're coming with me. Okay, Mr. Chun." Julian only brought me with him on the trip. We were going to another city to handle some business. When we landed, a car was already waiting for us. Julian had the driver take us directly to his apartment there. My mind was a mess, but I bit my tongue to stay focused. "Mr. Chun, am I staying there too?" It was a stupid question. Julian just said, "There's a guest room." "No, that's okay. I'll stay at a hotel," I said softly. Julian didn't force me. He just had the driver drop him off at his apartment and then take me to a hotel. When he got out of the car, I started to get out too to help with his luggage, but he coldly refused. For no reason at all. I felt like Julian was a little angry. The driver asked me which hotel. I gave him the name of the one closest to Julian's apartment. That way, if anything came up, I could get there quickly. At a dinner that night, Julian drank a lot. As his assistant, I should have been drinking for him. But Julian stopped me. His voice was quiet. "Just get me home later." Julian was drunk. I helped him out of the restaurant. He was taller than me, and with his arm draped over my neck, most of his weight was on me. He was heavy. Julian seemed really drunk. He was leaning on me completely. I hailed a cab. After we got in, Julian leaned back against the seat, his brow furrowed in discomfort. He had unbuttoned the top 2 buttons of his shirt. His tie was undone. Julian suddenly opened his eyes and turned to look at me. I was about to ask if he was feeling sick when he moved closer, his head tilting. He rested it on my shoulder. His hot breath on my neck made my whole body go stiff. I instinctively raised a hand to the other side of my neck. It was burning. I touched my ear. That was hot too. The driver glanced at us curiously in the rearview mirror. "Hey man, is your friend drunk?" "Yeah. It's $500 if he pukes in the car." A little while later, the driver asked if he should stop so I could buy some sobriety pills. I glanced at Julian on my shoulder and declined. When we got to the apartment, I helped Julian onto the sofa. Then I went to the kitchen to get him a glass of water. When I came back out, Julian was sitting up. His eyes were fixed on me the entire time. I felt a little awkward, but I still handed him the water. Julian, drink some water. Julian didn't take it. He just looked at me, his voice hoarse. Not calling me Mr. Chun anymore? I corrected myself. Mr. Chun, please have some water. Julian drank the water. When I was about to leave, he stopped me. It's late. Sleep in the guest room. I shook my head. My things are all at the hotel. Julian didn't say anything. I was debating whether to try a more tactful approach, when he suddenly grabbed my hand. The next second, I tumbled onto the sofa, and a weight pressed down on me. Julian was on top of me, his gaze dark and intense. There was an emotion in his eyes I couldn't understand. He gripped my chin. I instinctively tried to push him away, but the movement seemed to provoke him. Julian's grip tightened, and then his lips crashed down on mine. Our mouths tangled together. Julian bit and gnawed at my lips over and over. By the time he pulled away, my lips were numb. My eyes were wide with disbelief. Julian raised a hand and wiped my lips with his thumb. Sorry, I scared you. I couldn't speak, because Julian tilted my chin up and bit down on my neck. A jolt, like electricity, shot through my entire body. I couldn't take it and unconsciously called out his name. He paused for a second, then bit harder. When he pulled away from my neck, Julian said in a low voice, "I'm not drunk." In the end, I fled. For the next few days, I instinctively avoided Julian's gaze whenever I saw him. I started avoiding him. When the business trip ended, Julian and I ran into Louis at the company entrance. Louis couldn't get into Julian's company. He could only wait outside. "Alex." Louis started towards me as soon as he saw me. I instinctively looked at Julian. His face was expressionless. No matter how tough Louis acted, he didn't dare ignore Julian. He mumbled a greeting. Julian glanced at his watch. "Finish your business and then come up." "Okay." After he left, it was just me and Louis. "If you have something to say, just say it," I said coolly. "I have to get back to work." "I'm sorry, Alex." Save the apology. Louis asked me what it would take for me to forgive him. Remembering what happened, I really wanted to laugh. I had been played like a complete fool by Louis. If I hadn't been wearing my hearing aids that night, I'd probably still be a punchline for him and his friends. I looked at Louis and sneered, "Mr. High and Mighty, I'm deaf and I'm gay. Aren't you afraid I'll disgust you?" Louis's face went pale. His face was ashen. "I was drunk that night. I was talking nonsense." "No, you weren't drunk," I said, looking at him calmly. "You just wanted to play with me. Louis, you thought I couldn't live without you, so you could say those things in front of your friends. I just don't get it. Who gave you the right? You got me fired and told other companies not to hire me. Seriously, Louis, you should see a psychiatrist." Louis desperately grabbed for my hand. I shoved him away. "No, that's not it, Alex." Louis was rambling. "If you're unhappy because I got you fired, I can apologize. You can work wherever you want. Can you just—" No, I cut him off. Louis didn't even realize what he'd done wrong. My attitude was firm. Louis got angry too. "Then what do you want? What do you want me to do? You're working for my uncle. You think you're so special? There are tons of talented people in this city. Why would my uncle hire you as his assistant? Because you're exceptional? No, it's because he fucking wants you. He has ulterior motives. Isn't that hilarious? My own uncle is after my boyfriend." Louis practically screamed the last sentence. Seeing me stunned, Louis pulled a cigarette from his pocket and lit it. He stared at me. "Alex, I can get you a job somewhere else. All you have to do is quit." I snapped back to my senses and refused him coldly. "So? Is that it?" Louis looked at me, astonished. "He's into you and you're still going to work for him?" I couldn't help but laugh. "Louis, I've known for a while that Julian likes me. So what? What does that have to do with you?" Then, thinking of something, I added, "And I'm not your boyfriend. We broke up a long time ago." With that, I turned and walked into the building. I knocked on Julian's office door. When I pushed it open, I saw Julian smoking, leaning back lazily in his chair. This was the first time I'd ever seen him smoke. He looked up and asked, "All settled?" "Yeah, it's settled." Julian took another drag. "Good that it's settled." Before I could figure out what he meant by that, Julian stood up. "Are you still in love with Louis?" Although I didn't know why he was asking, I shook my head. "No." Julian smiled, leaning against his desk. "Alex, would you mind if I pursued you?" I was speechless. When Julian said he would pursue me, he meant it. "Alex, at least give me a chance." I swallowed the words I was about to say. My gaze toward Julian was complicated. He'd kissed me, he'd bitten me, and now we were talking about pursuing? Julian's pursuit lasted for 2 weeks. I was the first to break. That night, Julian was driving me home. From the passenger seat, I couldn't help but speak up. "Julian, please stop sending me flowers." Julian raised an eyebrow. "You don't like them?" "No, it's just there are too many." Julian nodded. "Okay, I'll send something else then." We quickly arrived at my place. Julian parked the car by the side of the road. I unbuckled my seatbelt and was about to get out when he called my name. "Alex." I turned to look at him. Julian's eyes were on me. He sighed. "I think I'm losing my self-control." "Huh? I want to kiss you." My mind went blank with a loud buzz. I could feel my head getting hot. Julian chuckled softly. "Go on home. Good night." I shifted in my seat. Leaning towards Julian, I quickly pecked him on the lips. I was about to pull back, when Julian's hand cupped the back of my head and deepened the kiss. By the time he let go of me, I felt like I was on fire. To make things worse, Julian touched my reddened ear. How did it get so red? How should I know? Julian gently patted my head. "Good night." An office romance is both nerve-wracking and thrilling. At work, he was my boss. After work, he was my boyfriend. Julian had a little to drink at a work dinner. But he wasn't drunk. I was going to take him home. But Julian didn't want to go. "Let's walk." I agreed. Julian suddenly took my hand. I wasn't used to it, but I let him hold it. "Alex," Julian called my name in a low voice. "What is it?" "I've seen you before." I was a little confused. "What?" Julian seemed to be reminiscing. His voice was gentle. "It was your sophomore year, I think. You were giving a speech on stage. I happened to be back at the university to discuss a donation with the administration, and I was just passing by. You were wearing a white school uniform, speaking at the podium. Then, afterward, I ran into you again. You were in a hurry and bumped into me. You barely looked up as you muttered an apology and rushed off. The next time we met, you were Louis's boyfriend, obediently calling me uncle along with him." As Julian spoke, his grip on my hand tightened. Back then, I thought just let it go. I didn't expect him to give me this chance. Julian laughed softly. "Julian." I stopped walking, looking at him with some confusion. "I'm deaf, and I'm basically an orphan." I licked my lips. "I don't really have any good qualities. What do you like about me?" For a moment, a seed of self-doubt sprouted in my heart. In every way, Julian and I were not a match. But just as quickly, Julian shattered that self-doubt. He said very seriously, "I like you. What does any of that have to do with it?" He paused. "You have plenty of good qualities. Otherwise, why would Louis still be so obsessed with you?" "Alex, I've liked you for a very long time." I don't know how Julian and I got back to his apartment, or how we started kissing. Julian had me pinned against the door, his kisses consuming me. Wait, Julian," I pressed against his shoulders. Let me breathe." A low chuckle rumbled from Julian's throat. He tilted his head and bit my neck. It hurt a little. Julian's hands gripped my waist as he murmured, "Why are you so thin? But your ass is nice and firm." His words made me blush. I raised a hand to cover his mouth. Julian kissed my palm. He asked if I had ever been with Louis. I said no. When I was with Louis, I was only a junior, and senior year was very busy. Louis had brought it up many times, right when I had made up my mind. He told me I was disgusting. Julian was very satisfied with my answer. He swept me up into his arms and carried me to the bedroom. Julian seemed very bothered by my time with Louis. As he kissed my Adam's apple, he asked if Louis had ever kissed me here. I shook my head. Julian asked many more questions. I was on the verge of breaking down and just took off my hearing aids. Julian smiled, and I nearly drowned. The next time I saw Louis was when I was out picking a gift for Julian. Louis's eyes were red as he stared at my neck, at the marks Julian had left there. "You slept with Julian?" he asked through gritted teeth. "None of your business." With that, I walked around him and left. I had just gotten home and closed the door when Julian wrapped his arms around me from behind. He buried his face in my shoulder. "Where have you been? You still have so much energy." After getting together with Julian, I discovered how incredibly clingy he could be. I handed him a bag. "I went to buy you a present." I had found out about Julian's birthday by accident. His 28th birthday. He'd worn me out last night, and I still dragged myself out of bed to buy him a gift. With this kind of determination, I feel like I could succeed at anything. Julian's eyes landed on the bag, and he took it. He said lazily, "I still prefer you." "No way. My whole body hurts." We won't," Julian said. "I just want to hold you." It was another wild night. When I woke up the next morning, I sucked in a sharp breath. Sore, aching, swollen. I slowly got out of bed. Julian was on the balcony on the phone. I had just walked over when I heard him say, "You don't need to set me up on any dates. I have a boyfriend." Of course, a boyfriend is a guy. I was about to explode. Julian was coming out to his family. I slid the balcony door open with a whoosh. Julian turned his head. "I have to go, he's awake." I waited until he hung up before I went out. "Are you crazy?" Julian pulled me over and kissed me on the lips. Seeing that he wasn't the least bit concerned, I took a deep breath. "You came out to your family?" "Yeah, just now." Julian said it so casually. I started to panic. What did they say? Did they, I paused, my mind filling with worst-case scenarios. Tell you to break up? Or tell you to see a doctor? Being gay was something many parents couldn't accept. Julian raised an eyebrow. "No, my mom told me to bring you home sometime." I was so worked up that Julian's words left me stunned. He squeezed the back of my neck. "Worried about me?" "Yeah." Julian was quiet for a moment. Then he chuckled softly. "If they don't approve, I'll run away with you." Running away is for teenagers. Julian's smile froze. He narrowed his eyes. "You think I'm old?" I sensed trouble. I took a big step back and shook my head frantically. Not old at all. You're still in your prime." "Wait, no. You're the perfect age." Julian wasn't smiling anymore. "You're not sleeping tonight." For my own sake, I hesitated for a second, then stepped forward and wrapped my arms around his neck. His face was blank. "Even if you apologize, I'm not forgiving you." I kissed him. "I like you. I want to grow old with you."